Is that recording?
I started? Oh, I think it has now. Yeah, it started.
Oh, cool. Oh, is that where that light came on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can always trim the beginning of it.
Trim it, yeah, just trim that. I'll let you do the intro.
Okay.
Nice podcast.
Okay, so as promised last week, myself and Ashley are going to do a podcast about grunge music and also our musical influences and what made us love grunge music so much. And in the background we've got a bit of Pearl Jam.
I hope you can pick that up.
Just to give us a bit of
flavour, get it into
background.
inspire us. Turn it down.
Music.
Yeah, so a bit of a change of topic this time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bit of a departure from our usual spodcasts.
Well, yeah, I mean, music as well as film.
Well, I think the remit, wasn't it? When you started, it was going to be books and all kind of entertainment, really, wasn't it?
Interested us.
So we've done quite a few films now, haven't we?
Yeah.
So we thought it was about time we did music.
Yeah.
And we settled on the grunge genre because that's kind of what we were. I wouldn't say we were growing up during it, but it was very pervasive.
Yeah,
during our 20s, wasn't it?
Quite influential, and a lot of the artists of that time we've grown with.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And some of them have died.
Yeah,
along the way.
We've watched them die, haven't we?
Yeah, quite a few of them actually.
Yeah, there ain't many left of the grunge.
No. And a lot of influences on us in different ways.
We thought what we might start doing, just to give us like a little foundation, is to discuss where we both came from musically, our sort of musical upbringing, if you like. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that first, Emil.
Well, I didn't come from a very musical family. I didn't really sort of buy records or listen to records in my family. And my only sort of way of hearing music was Top of the Pops, probably like a lot of other kids my age in the 70s, 80s. So my earliest influences would have been, I think, well, I can remember my first song that I ever bought, and that was Olivia Newton-John's Let's Get Physical.
Olivia Neutron Bomb.
Yeah, which I bought for 50p in Woolworths.
Now defunct, obviously.
Yeah, but that was basically because I liked the look of her on the cover of it. She was in a leotard. Would that have been? Did you say Let's Get Physical? Yeah. So I don't know when that was. Maybe 80.
Yeah, it must have been 80, 81 maybe.
So I was maybe 10 or 11. So yeah, I was just starting to look at women and think, oh yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that wasn't musical. Later, it was bands like the Specials and Funboy 3, which are ska sort of bands, and then Madness a bit.
Yeah, I was into Madness big time.
Yeah,
I remember having our house.
Yeah.
On picture disc 7-inch. I remember going into Boots in town because they used to have a record section at the top, didn't they? You went up the elevator.
Yeah.
Or the escalator. Escalator, wasn't it? And at the top they had all the singles, all the the top 40, I believe. And I remember buying that. Anyway, sorry, carry on. While I've nicked out, I found a card.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to show you this. So this is a bubblegum card.
Oh, right.
And I was looking through my mum was looking through some old, I think it was in like an old, there was like Christmas cards.
Right.
And an envelope, and this fell out. But I will talk about that in a minute. And I looked at it, I was like, my God, this is probably like this bubblegum card, it's a little bit, it's not too creased really, but this is probably about, this card's probably from about 1975.
Oh, right, blimey.
But I'll talk about it later anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry, Mel, carry on.
That's all right. So yeah.
Madness.
Yeah, a bit of madness, a bit of ska music, and I really sort of like that. And then after that, I got into a bit of New Romantics, funnily enough, and Duran Duran. They were a big favourite of mine for some reason. I don't know why. And then I don't know.
So what's that take you up to? That takes you up to sort of like the middle 80s, doesn't it?
Yeah. Then
about
after that,
86,
I can't really remember really listening to music for, I don't know.
Well, I remember seeing Wild Boy's video on, it was some Saturday morning kids show. I remember them making a big deal of it because at the time I think it was the most expensive
it was.
video, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
It was directed by Russell Mulcahy. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah.
But he directed Highlander. So that kind of tied in with my interest in film as well. So it was like a dual. It's quite clever, really, I suppose. I mean, from a marketing perspective. But
yeah, it was a bit Mad Maxy.
It was a bit Mad Maxy, wasn't it? The video, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, all very pop, really, up until then. And I guess the next time that do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, no, please do.
Got into any other...
So during this stage, obviously you're still at school, aren't you? You're not a teenager.
Yeah, and I don't think I really sort of was that bothered by music.
Was it something that was kind of just
it was
in
just
the background
there, like,
sort of thing?
You know, top of the pops or whatever.
Yeah,
I'd watch it and I'd like it, but like there was nothing, you know, it wasn't like I followed...
You didn't latch on...
No, not then,
because
I was more interested in football, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well that's...
Football was my thing.
Passion.
Then. And then, yeah, maybe when I left school, like 17, 18, when I started going to the pubs, and I was surrounded by a lot of people who were heavily into music.
Yeah.
In this particular pub that we used to go in,
the jukebox.
There was a jukebox that played predominantly rock music, and classic rock and everything that I'd never heard before. I'd never been exposed to, and I think it's from there that I got into rock music, and then that led on to eventually grunge,
which we'll get onto, won't we?
Yeah.
But it's definitely funny. Not funny, but it's telling that you flagged that up, because it is very true that it's often with the company you mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
You perhaps you get exposed. Your peer group. You get exposed to stuff that you might not have necessarily sought yourself. The same, similar thing to me, really.
Some mums and dads used to play a lot of music. They'd be exposed to it in the home, but I was never exposed to music. It was never part of my family.
No, exactly.
You were saying a similar thing, weren't you? Like,
it was basically my friend's cool sort of lefty socialist mum who liked all the cool music. The Jones boys, the Jones family, the infamous Jones family. But I had to get my my musical kicks, if you like, from them, because my parents were very conservative. Yeah. So I grew up with, we were just talking about this before we started recording, but I came from quite a sort of, how can I put it? Yeah, quite a conservative background, in that my parents didn't really. They were of an older generation.
Well, yeah, I think both of us,
probably
both of our parents, both sets of our parents are a lot older than a lot of the other parents of our generation. So yeah, I think that did have a bearing on it.
It did have a bearing, yeah, because my parents were listening to stuff like, it was like Elvis and
and
a lot of country music, like Don Williams and
that was
Hank Williams or Don Williams, Don McLean. Was it Hank Williams? Wasn't it? And quite a lot of the sort of middle of the road country. There's a few, a few bit of bluegrass in there with like perhaps early Dolly Parton and stuff, but nothing that really excited me. I could get really. I mean, I never played my parents' record collection.
No.
My dad used to watch Songs of Praise, which was like a religious program hosted by Harry Seacombe, with the Goons, and he'd sing along to like the old, hymns standards that I totally wasn't into. I kind of regaled against that later on in life, but so yeah. I mean, I think like you. I think one of the first, eye-opening things for me. Well, I remember going to a youth club. There was a youth club. I don't know if you ever went to a youth club.
Yeah.
Did you go to a youth club in Bindon?
Yes, we did.
Well, we had one in Smart.
Had a record player.
And it had a record player.
Yeah, we used. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
and that's where you'd get slightly alternative stuff that you wouldn't have heard at home. And I had an older friend who was very much into the music of the time. He was very into rock and heavy metal, and I think I was a little bit. I wasn't ready for that yet, and he used to try and get me into like AC/DC and Iron Maiden and Zeppelin, and Bowie. I just couldn't quite
out there.
Yeah, it was just exactly.
Time.
It was just a little bit too much out there for me. So I kind of he did try, and I think he lent me cassettes and stuff, and I might play them a few times, but I didn't really get excited about it really. I didn't really become obsessive. Well, I wouldn't say I'm obsessive now, but maybe I don't know. But I didn't get really interested in music till later on. And like you, I think it took something like seeing Blondie and Kate Bush on Top of the Pops.
Yes.
Blondie in her chiffon.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, also something we also have in common, Olivia Newton-Bomb.
Yeah.
I remember having, I think she did like a greatest hits album, and I remember going to Maidstone Price and buying that on vinyl.
Yeah.
And that had like some of her early stuff, because she did some early. Her early stuff was country.
Oh right.
She did like, obviously she was in Greece and stuff, but I think when she was in Australia starting out, she did quite a lot of country stuff, and this had like Take Me Home Country Road on it, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the advent of the video, the pop video, got me a little bit more excited about music, and again, like you, Duran Duran, Madness, but even then, not it was. I bought a few singles.
Yeah.
I remember buying John Lennon's "Woman," I think, for my mum, because she quite liked that song. So, but I wasn't really aware of the Beatles' cultural significance, perhaps at the time.
I can remember buying Michael Jackson's "Bad," and I really liked the album, but I was never a big Michael Jackson fan.
Yeah, I mean, I bought Thriller.
I
got sort of bought into the hype of that. I think
right.
It was. Because again, it's the video that got me into it. Because it was Thriller, the video, directed by John Landis.
Yeah, I remember when.
I remember buying the video.
That was a massive thing.
Getting my mum to buy, I think, because I wasn't 15 yet, but it was a 15.
When it was on TV, it was like a huge thing, wasn't it?
It was massive. Yeah,
everyone wanted to watch it.
They premiered it, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
I remember going into I think that was like W.H. Smith's or John Menzies or something, and buying the video and then buying the album. And I did listen to that a lot, Thriller, the album. And I really liked it, but yeah, I'd never claimed to be a massive Jackson. In fact, that was the only Michael Jackson album I ever bought of his. To be fair, you bought Bad. I
bought Bad. Yeah.
I remember Jeremy, our friend, really liked Michael Jackson. Then he went to see him.
Yes, yeah, he did.
Wherever it was.
No, but also, like, I'm just remembering now, like albums that I bought and I listened to a lot. In Excess.
Oh yeah.
Which I guess are a bit more rocky.
Yeah. That's perhaps the start of your
possibly
introduction to rock music.
He was always bless you.
Sorry.
A bit of he thought he was Jim Morrison, didn't he?
He wanted to be, didn't he?
Michael Hutchins. But yeah. But yeah, I was never like say I was like into one band or like one style of music. No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure, like a lot of people, and like yourself, maybe I used to get the compilation albums. Like that's what I call music. Yeah, I bought a couple of them. Yeah, the early ones, maybe volume 2 or 3, because it had stuff like Duran. It'd be a compilation of the Eurythmics, Yazoo. Yeah. Duran Duran. It would have Adam and the Ants. It would have it all sort of on there, wouldn't it? Yeah. So I would just buy a compilation album rather than an individual artist's album. Yeah.
because I used to think perhaps, that's obviously the cream of the album, so why buy an album that's got a lot of filler tracks on it? I just want the pinnacle. Yeah. And obviously later on I realised that wasn't the way to go, but yeah, like, I think leaving school really was that's when my musical journey began, because like you said, we mixed with because we mixed in the same sort of circles, didn't we? And I remember, sorry to go back to the Jones family, his Joe's mum Caroline, she was always really into like hippie music, right? So they played Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, because I think they like to be at the old way.
Yeah, see, I'd never heard of any of those bands before.
Exactly.
Like, I met all those guys.
But what did make an impression was Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. Right. Yeah. I do remember that freaking me out when I heard that. I listened to that; it just totally blew my mind. That the musical version of War of the Worlds, just thought that was so cool. And Van Halen, I think that's the first time I ever heard Van Halen around the house. Right. Because I remember they had the one. Is it called? Isn't it called 1984? What's the one with the kid smoking the angels, the cherub smoking a cigarette on the cover?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Whatever it's the one with Jump on it, basically.
Right.
The album with Jump on it.
Okay.
So that was my first exposure to like sort of that kind of American rock, I guess you'd want to call it. Yeah. Rather than the more radio-friendly stuff that was coming out of Britain, like pop music, like Howard Jones and Eurythmics and stuff like that. But then mixing with the guys in the Bell, that's when the jukebox, and you hear a lot of. I got to hear a lot of Zeppelin and stuff, and I sort of my appreciation
and
grew.
Again, like your peer group tell you about a band, and then you go away and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna
buy that. Yeah,
because they've said it's good, and then you buy it and you listen to it, and then that leads to something else.
Yeah, I sort of had a gradual. Sort of.
Yeah, it was a slow. Burn. It wasn't like
exactly. I remember like buying my first semi-rock album I bought was Mr. Mister on cassette, right? Because I really liked Broken Wings. I remember that song. Yeah. But I think it was quite a big chart hit, wasn't it? So that was very like AOR kind of bit middle of the road, lot of keyboard and polished production values, and then I kind of was reintroduced to Iron Maiden again by a friend of mine called Tarquin on the train, and I kind of dismissed heavy metal, and I was still at school, I think, at this point, and he was like, "No, you listen to this album," and I remember he set like an ultimatum for me. We were on a train journey, and the train journey probably didn't last any more than 15 minutes, but he said, "Have my headphones," and I think he played. It was either Murders in the Room or that's off the Killers album, where it might have been Iron Maiden off the first album. I can't remember which one now, but he basically said. Because I was always very dismissive, like heavy metal, it's all about Satan, and it's all like, it's just noise. It's noise. That's all that heavy metal is. It's just noise. It's just like loud guitars and some bloke shouting, and it's just rubbish. So he said, put these headphones on. He said, really listen. So I got him to thank for this, really. He said, or maybe I haven't got him not to thank for it. It's all his fault, basically. Tarquin's fault that my interest in like rock music or whatever. But he said, if you get to the end of the journey, because we were getting off at the Ashford town, the bigger town, he said, if you don't love this album or these songs, by the time you get to the destination, then he said, there's no hope for you. But if you really listen, without prejudice, as George Michael said, take in the musicianship and the songwriting, and he said, I guarantee you will find, if you open your mind, man, you will find like an appreciation. And sure enough, like you were saying about this, going out and buying the back catalogue. By the time I got to the end of my journey, I absolutely loved what I'd heard, and I was like, I must basically buy all the Iron Maiden stuff. So I basically, probably spent all my when was this? Was I working? Probably pocket money still, but I might have just had a part-time job. Probably paper round. Yeah. Probably all my paper round money. And so I think I got up to probably their album Somewhere in Time. So that about 1986 then, I guess. Right. And that was when it was like the floodgates sort of opened, and all of a sudden it was like, wow, shit.
It's like, what do they call it? The
like an epiphany.
you know, like they call cannabis the
or gateway drug.
Gateway,
yeah.
So,
Iron Maiden was my gateway drug to rock music and heavy metal, I guess. Yeah.
And it led to a whole lot of other stuff.
It did, and then you know, friends like remember Ian. Well, he's still about, but Ian, he was really into Slayer, and Megadeth, and Metallica, and you know, I tried. I didn't mind Metallica and I didn't mind Megadeth, but I really struggled with Slayer.
Yeah,
could never quite get into them. They were a little bit too, and he liked stuff like Cannibal Corpse,
and thrash,
thrash metal. And that I kind of, you know, I toyed with that, but some of it I really liked, but it was, you know, it wasn't really my genre of choice. I don't think.
No.
And then it was Guns N' Roses, and then of course we were of the age where we started going to gigs.
Yeah, we went to Donington
in '88.
We saw Guns N' Roses, which was
amazing.
Again,
gig.
I don't think I was really that aware of who Guns N' Roses were, and obviously, like a lot of the people who we went with were.
I think I was reading Kerrang! By
I think Tarquin, he was there, wasn't he? And I think him, he again was going on. I remember on the coach.
He probably persuaded us.
He was going on about
Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, Appetite for Destruction, the album, like saying how good it was. So Tarquin, he has.
He's quite integral, isn't he?
Into
the story, really.
Yeah.
And we kind of bump into him occasionally, don't we?
Occasionally,
He lives, don't know where he lives, but we're often at gigs and he'll be there.
That's right.
Well, he has been a couple of times, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least once. That was at that Peeping Tom gig, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mike Patton's band. He happened to be in front of us, which was really random.
That's right. Yeah, so he's a
kind of abiding influence, or you know, figure. But and then Ozzy, got into Ozzy for a while, and sort of some proggy stuff like Magnum. I got into Magnum and Jethro Tull. I sort of went back and then I bought Zeppelin. Got really into Zeppelin and sort of had to get all the back catalogue of, you know, the Zeppelin albums. And so and then it was kind of the glam metal explosion, wasn't it, in the 80s? So you had all the glam metal bands. Guns N' Roses obviously opened the floodgates to every band wanted to sort of replicate that phenomenon, didn't they? Really. So you had, you know, Poison and Bon Jovi and
I was never really into any of that. I don't know. I don't know what I was doing, but I wasn't listening to any of that.
Maybe you were.
I think I might have gone back to poppy stuff again.
Possibly.
Or
because we fell out of. Well, we're not. No, hold on. Well, we fell out of touch for a little while, didn't we? But,
a couple of years.
But in the sort of, I don't know, in the late 80s, we were sort of about together, weren't we? Going down the Bell pub and listening to the Jukebox.
I don't know. I think I was listening to a lot of female vocalists.
Songstresses.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing, like Tori Amos.
Well, yeah, Tori Amos, and you were
Heather Nova,
yeah.
and other. I had a thing for Kathy Dennis. Yeah.
Did you join our fan club?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't join our fan club.
I should have done.
You had a picture of her on
your
wall.
I
do remember that.
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing now.
Have you still got it?
No.
Yeah, I think I went sort of the other way. I went sort of into the. I mean, I quite like the melody of. I like that gritty, earthy kind of the stuff like Guns N' Roses, which seemed to be very honest and, you know, it was a bit sleazy. Some of it, I didn't always get on with some of the lyrical content.
You were into you Motley Crue and all that.
I did. I had sort of flirted with them. I kind of went off them when I got a bit older. I kind of thought I started to think they were a bit naff. To be fair, you know, the lyrics were quite. It's hardly Shakespeare, is it? Like Motley Crue lyrics.
And Def Leppard.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm massive into Leppard. Yeah. How can I forget them? I mean, I was hugely into them. Hysteria. I remember buying that, getting on the train to Folkestone and going to our price, and on the day it came out to buy that because I was really excited about buying that album. About 1987, that was. But yeah, I mean, I still quite like Leppard, but other stuff kind of fell by the wayside. Really, it just seemed a little bit. Sort of old hat and a bit cheesy, really, lyrically,
and that's sort of getting us.
Well, that's getting us to where we're going,
because we were discussing about like that grunge was sort of like a reaction against.
Well,
hair metal.
It was definitely a complete response, wasn't it? To
sort
that.
Of like punk was in the 70s. Was a reaction against the
sort of prog rock.
Yeah,
of like Yes and
you
know, bands
so
like
grunge
that.
was like a movement. In a way, wasn't it? Like a musical movement sort of anti a lot of the
Cock
music.
rock.
Yeah, it was like saying, you know, fuck you, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to dress up and be
Backcomb
pretty.
our hair.
We're not going to be pretty boys. You know, we're going to play sort of dirty, fucking rock music.
Yeah, yeah. Get back to basics, really,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah, because again, I think a bit like rock had become in the 70s. It was becoming very corporate and overproduced.
Yeah.
And yeah, the grunge movement kind of, and the same with the glam metal, that or the cock rock or whatever you want to call it, that like stuff like Whitesnake. It all became very overproduced.
Yeah.
Didn't it? Like the videos were all soft focus and, you know, the back-combed hair and the shoulder pads, wasn't it? It all became rather corporate and like manufactured, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And of course, I guess you could say, you know, grunge
in the end,
became a little bit
in
like
the
that.
end, the industry got hot. They saw a market, didn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
And they, like with Nirvana and all that, you know, they
were just looking for the next big thing.
Yeah, they were like,
weren't they?
oh, this is the next big thing,
their
so we're
portfolio.
gonna get loads of grunge
It
bands.
sounds. Let's go to Seattle and just sign every grunge band that's in Seattle.
Yeah, or if we can't find them, we'll just manufacture them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
there were a lot, you know.
I always struggle with Bush.
Yeah, they were.
Because they were like at the arse end of grunge, weren't they? Really?
Yeah, they were.
You know, when it was at its peak.
Yeah.
And they were like Britain's answer to.
Yes, and they were very successful.
They were very successful, but I always thought they were a little bit naff.
Yeah.
They weren't doing anything new, really.
No,
were they?
no.
And that movement had kind of.
It had gone.
Yeah, it had gone, really, hadn't it?
Yeah.
It was massive for about 4 or 5 years, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And then it kind of exploded, and.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, Bush were kind of at the arse end of it, really.
Yeah.
A bit late to the party.
They didn't really have anything
new to say.
add.
No, not exactly. It'd been done.
Yeah.
Maybe they just underlined it.
Yeah.
But, by the way, that card, that bubblegum card, it's the fucking Bay City Rollers.
Oh, right.
That's one band I was into.
Yeah.
Which you shouldn't really admit to now. It's probably as bad as admitting to liking Gary Glitter, isn't it? But
yeah.
There you go.
No, yeah. Basically Rollers, yeah, they were.
But that's
Scottish boy band.
That's right. I don't know who he is, but he's one of them. But I think it does say actually. Bay City Rollers. I haven't got my glasses on. I can't read it.
I think the singer was Leo McKern. I remember that, but I don't remember anything else about them.
That's Les. That's Les Woody.
Oh, right.
I think it says Woody.
Is that the drummer?
Probably.
Because I think he. Oh well. No.
He looks a bit like Davy Jones there. He's not the one who got done for paedophilia, is
Yeah.
he? Oh, child porn one. Okay.
I think he's dead now.
Okay, well, we can talk about it and then he's dead.
I think he is. He might not be.
I hope so. I mean, I don't hope so, but I mean, well, maybe I do. I don't know. We'll get that's hot potato, that one. But anyway,
allegedly.
I'll sell that on eBay for, you know.
We'll have to get our lawyers to pass.
Yeah.
See whether we can
pass this one. But anyway, back to grunge. So wow, yeah. How did you're partly responsible. I think I bought. I'll tell you how I got. I tell you now. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you because I used to read Kerrang at the time, and I basically I didn't buy every 5. You know, Kerrang used to have a review system where it was like 5Ks, and if you got 5Ks, it was like that was like the album. You had to buy that. They didn't really give 5 out very often, but if it did, you knew it was worth buying. And I think I remember I bought Soundgarden an album called Loud Love, which I think was it was either their second or third album, but I wasn't aware of them previous to that. They'd done a few. I mean, they really were quite the. I think they were the instigator. They were pre-Nirvana.
Right.
Like a lot of people. They get kind of lumped into the whole sound, and as their success kind of came after Nirvana, they kind of as seen as successors. But I'm pretty sure that they actually were before Nirvana, because even Loud Love was about 88, so that was still hair metal era. Yeah. So they were very, very pioneering, really, because no one was kind of doing that doomy sound of like a mixture of Zeppelin and a mixture of Black Sabbath, because you had like Chris Cornell's Robert Plant-esque vocals mixed with kind of Tony Iommi's sort of doomy riffs, and that was kind of the sound of Soundgarden. And I remember buying that album, and there's a song called Loud Love, which is a really good song. It starts with a really sort of discordant riff at the beginning, really chunky sort of riff, and yeah, it took me a while to. I mean, that's something with them. We did that. Well, Super Unknown was another one that I found their albums. You had to really they tested you a little bit.
I found the earlier stuff like that album quite inaccessible. At the time, like I couldn't, like, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah, it took me a long time. Yeah. I mean, I bought Loud Love, and then I can't think of the following up album, but I bought Super Unknown, and that bass I played it once, just couldn't get it.
No,
couldn't really connect with it, and it took taking that album to university when we went away. So that album literally sat on my shelf for about like I don't know when it came out, 92 was it? But it sat on my shelf basically for a couple of years, and it just, you know, I'd dip in now and again, try and play it. Still couldn't quite get where it's coming from.
No.
But it took going to uni and a car ride with you playing Stone Temple Pilots first album, Core.
Yeah, Stone Temple Pilots were a big sort of, and still are, like, and, you know, I was even listening to them today, like, so yeah. I was never like Nirvana.
No,
I never got Nirvana ever.
Well, people always ask. I mean, like, they don't always ask me, but some people have said like, "Oh, you like grunge? You must like Nirvana."
No.
And my excuse for that, or whatever, is that I had a sort of finite amount of grunge bands that I could kind of follow, and my list had already been taken up with Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Stone Temple Pilots. I didn't really have room for another one, so consequently I didn't listen to much Alice in Chains.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
Alice in Chains.
And I didn't listen to much Nirvana. I mean, obviously, Smells Like Teen Spirit was all over the radio, so you couldn't avoid it. But I never owned a copy of it.
I think there was part of me that was like, because they were
they were popular. Yeah.
And everyone was going on about it. I didn't like them. I was a bit like that.
It's a bit like if everyone likes them, they can't be that good.
Yeah. So I was looking for like something
the more obscure.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Not so populist stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you on that. Yeah, and because people just were banging on about Nirvana all the time, I was like, well, you know, what about these guys? These guys have got good songs as well. You should be listening to these guys.
So yeah, Pearl Jam, like you say, Stone Temple Pilots, and Soundgarden. Yeah, the big three for me as well.
Yeah, the big three. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I suppose perhaps later in life, I had an appreciation for Nirvana.
Yeah.
And their influence.
Yes.
But I just didn't.
No,
I just kind of missed the boat really, and it's the same thing really with like the Beatles. If we're going back to different eras, I acknowledge their massive influence on music,
but they're not.
And you know, there's no doubt about it. They were brilliant songwriters and musicians, but I just never quite got into them because I got into Zeppelin, and that consumed all my listening time. I didn't have time for another sort of late 60s. Well, they were. Beatles were 50s, weren't they originally? But I didn't have a. It sounds quite narrow-minded, really, but maybe it is. But I just didn't have time for, you know, to go through all that back catalogue of Beatles albums when I was being satisfied musically by Zeppelin and the current crop of, you know, bands that existed in the 80s.
Well, I mean, you talking about Led Zeppelin, there's almost like a connection with grunge, I would say, because of like. If you think of like some of the heavy riffs that you get in Led Zeppelin songs, you get in grunge, don't you?
Oh, so, yeah.
I mean, those sort of bands like Led Zeppelin and
the distorted guitar,
Black Sabbath must have influenced those young musicians.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Pearl Jam have had Robert Plant coming on.
So.
And you look at Foo Fighters.
Yes,
they had Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, didn't they?
Yeah, Dave Grohl's a massive, Led Zeppelin fan.
In fact, he nearly drummed for him, didn't he? At the O2. gig in '07 when they got back together, but they got Jason Bonham in the end, which is fitting, obviously. But he did. I think he did audition for it.
Dave Grohl. He's another one. Like,
well, obviously from Nirvana.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of Foo Fighters, but I can appreciate their music.
Yeah, I mean he's an amazing musician, Dave Grohl.
Yeah,
I have a bit of a problem with their music. So they've done some really good songs. They've done a handful of really brilliant songs, but I always find them a little bit middle of the road.
Yeah,
it might sound a bit harsh.
Well, they're very commercial, aren't they?
They're very commercial.
They've got a wide fan base.
Yes,
they? Which,
they're not a kind of band that alienates an audience, are they?
No, they're not. They're not edgy, are they? Really?
That is probably it, isn't it? They're
Whereas
not edgy.
I like a bit of edginess,
bit of danger, which you got with stuff like Stone Temple Pilots with Scott Weiland, obviously. Because he was a dangerous kind of guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. That sort of rock and roll element to a performance, or you
never quite knew what you were going to get, did you?
Yeah. It might be rubbish, one night, but then the next night it's like
it could be electric.
Yeah,
it was kind of I mean, I'm sure it obviously is very rehearsed, but it lacks. It has that. I think it goes back to that the early Guns N' Roses stuff, whereas it wasn't polished.
Yeah,
it almost had that punk sort of ethic.
Yeah, it's like that punk attitude, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like grunge did have that, I think.
Yeah.
It was anti-establishment.
Yeah.
It was like sticking two fingers up
to the man.
Yeah.
And it was about stuff that you could relate to. It was about, I mean, it gets sort of, it gets the piss taken out of it and ridiculed for it, but quite often in stuffy music magazines. But it was about, to me, it was about disaffected. Young, when you're young and you feel a bit disaffected.
Young men.
Basically. Yeah.
Men talking about their feelings.
Trying to find your way in the world, and your place in everything. And it spoke to, I'm sure, us, as 20-somethings. I mean, we were in our 20s, weren't we, when sort of grunge exploded. 88, 71, I was about 17 actually. But I mean, 17, 18. Teenagers. So that's the kind of time when you want something to come along and express what you're feeling, don't you? That's what that music did. It expressed how you were feeling.
Yeah.
You felt awkward. Yeah. You felt disaffected. You felt, ostracised or whatever. You felt like a bit of a fuck up or a,
Yeah. Like you didn't have a place in
you didn't
society or whatever. Yeah, people looked at you. Yeah.
Felt like a misfit.
Yeah.
Didn't you, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying you did, but I mean, one felt a bit like a misfit.
Yeah.
And here comes a musical genre.
And they're all
which
misfits.
is saying, yeah, exactly, they're all misfits, saying, yeah, we fucking know what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Here's a song about it.
Yeah.
You can bang your head and whatever to it and pump your fists or whatever.
That's right, yeah. And then it's all about belonging, isn't it?
A tribe, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, rock music and grunge sort of.
I think good rock music, good music.
Yes,
it should do that.
Yeah,
whether it's rock or whatever genre, it should provoke you in that way.
Yeah, it should speak to you, shouldn't it?
And that's why I have a big problem with pop music.
Yeah,
is because it's very surface.
Yeah, and
shallow and superficial. Generally, isn't it? Not all of it, but generally, it's all about having a good time.
Yeah,
and partying.
Don't think about
tomorrow.
Don't get too deep about. Stuff, just like go and have a dance.
Yeah, have a dance, have a party, Ibiza,
Yeah.
Whereas, good music, not just grunge, but good music for me should
introspective.
Yeah, I'm not talking about introspection like Coldplay, which is a lot of old bollocks. But I mean, it should challenge you, shouldn't it?
Should make you think.
Exactly. And for me, 99% of pop music doesn't challenge me.
No.
It's just superficial surface.
Although some good pop music
pop music does.
Yeah.
And some, there's stuff from the 80s that even the new romantic stuff you were talking about earlier, like Ultravox, stuff like that, Roxy Music.
Yeah.
And Bowie, he was popular.
Yeah.
But I mean, he challenged.
Yes.
He challenged his.
Yeah,
his audience, didn't he? Really, because he would just reinvent himself.
Well, he never stood still, did he? Like even till.
So you had to really you had to adapt. I mean, if you like glam rock, with Ziggy Stardust, you must have been really shocked when, you know, he sort of reinvented himself as the Thin White Duke and did like Let's Dance and stuff, which is more like a disco sort of sound.
Well, he was challenging the whole thing about sexuality, wasn't he? Like,
yeah, exactly.
And, you know, gender and all that, you know, before
It was
anyone
a
else was doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's another one, like, I was never really sort of into him, but I can appreciate like what he did and, you know, his legacy in music. Yeah, I mean, that's getting off the grunge bit. But,
well, it's all, I think it's, well, you say that, but Scott Weiland was from Stone Temple Pilots was very influenced by Bowie.
That's true, yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff on the later albums which is Bowie-esque.
Yes.
So
that is very true. Yeah.
I mean, he's a big Bowie fan, Sex Pistols fan, so a lot of that was permeated.
Yeah.
The sound, you could tell.
Yeah.
You know, everything kind of gets reinvented and repackaged.
It does, yeah.
And that's the way
you
it is.
Feed off your own influences, don't you?
Of course.
Which I guess is what we're talking about. Anyway, really, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. But talking about Stone Temple Pilots, they're sort of you were talking about Bush.
Yeah.
Being like at the arse end.
Yeah.
Stone Temple Pilots were always sort of, I always felt like looked down upon.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
With it from the grunge
of
community.
If we're going to say of the big, Alice in Chains, they were probably were they before Stone Temple Pilots?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
So if you look at the big three, you had Pearl Jam. Well, you had Soundgarden. Well, no, four, isn't it? Really, you had Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and like you say, at the end, number 5 was probably Stone Temple Pilots. Yeah. So they always got sort of unfairly called out as being derivative and you know, just basically hanging onto the coattails,
copying what had already come before. Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't believe that's true. If you listen to, you know,
I think certainly post Core. I mean, Core, the first album, that was very much part of that grunge tradition, wasn't it? Yeah. That that fitted very easily into all the rest of the sound that was going on. Yeah. You know, the sort of Eddie Vedder-esque baritone sort of vocals. But then after that, they went their own sort of way, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah, they grew.
They definitely evolved into something very different. Yeah. And you listen to later stuff, it has its own identity. Yeah, it wears its influences on its sleeve, you know, the Bowie type sound and you know, things like that. But it's, I think, a bit like that. Like they all did, really. They all kind of evolved, didn't they? Even Pearl Jam. You know, the first 2 albums were of that sound, and then they sort of went a bit. I think maybe they went too far in trying not to be pigeonholed, and they did a lot of sort of it was almost like sort of underground punk albums, which I kind of struggled a little bit with, like Black Flag-esque stuff, and then they did stuff with Neil Young, didn't they? They worked with him on an album. It's almost like they were trying deliberately to kind of get out of that,
get away from their origins or whatever.
Yeah, which you can understand, because you know, but like all those bands, they just became so huge, didn't they, overnight? Like massive. Yeah. And what you hear from interviews with Eddie Vedder and you know, a lot of those guys, they were uncomfortable with the fame aspect of it. And you know what you know, their privacy being impinged on because they became so huge, and they, you know, it's like double-edged sword, isn't it? You want to be a bit of an edgy underground band and cool, but you know, that don't pay the rent, does it? No. And then once you get big, well then haven't you just sold out to the man?
That's right.
So it's
like
it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Chris Cornell, in his solo work, you know, do you think, like, as a solo artist, he was possibly more successful than Soundgarden? Like, did he sell, like, because he had a lot of commercial hits, didn't he? Like,
he did an album with Timbaland or something.
It was almost like dance music.
I've never heard that album, actually.
Yeah, I tried listening to it.
Yeah, it got really bad reviews.
And it's so different from him, like, I don't know.
Maybe he was just trying something
different. He did the Bond thing, didn't he? I think he was...
You Know My Name.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, he was.
I think as older statesmen, as older, there's. I guess maybe he wanted some sort of credibility beyond, the pigeonhole of rock music or grunge, because he kind of. I don't know who split the band up, but they sort of came to quite an. Because I remember getting tickets to go and see him. I'm sure they were going to play Reading, that Reading gig we went to in '94.
Right.
I'm positive I got tickets to go because I really wanted to see them, and they split up before that gig, and we got Red Hot Chili Peppers as replacement.
That's right, yeah.
And I was gutted because I really wanted to see Soundgarden.
Yeah, one of the bands that I wish I'd seen, but I never did.
Yeah, and they came to a rather sort of sad end, really. Down on the Upside was the album that kind of broke them up, and I think perhaps they felt like they'd reached their, perhaps the limits of their creativity, and then like you say, Chris Cornell went on to do solo work. A lot of his stuff is really good.
Yeah,
and Audio Slave.
Yeah, Audio Slave. Yeah,
which were another good band.
Yes.
And then of course, well, we can't sort of talk about grunge without talking about suddenly some of the tragic side of it. We lost Chris Cornell a couple of years ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
And Scott Weiland as well.
Yeah.
And that's and obviously Cobain went.
Yeah,
he was the first one, and
lead singer of Alice in Chains.
Yeah, he went.
Mostly to drug and drink abuse or other mental health, or a mixture of all of those.
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah.
It seems like a genre that it
and they're all lead singers as well.
And its fair share of sort of its fair share of casualties. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's
and still the Pearl Jam soldier on.
Yeah.
So where do you think? So what is okay? We've had grunge, as a massive movement for, say, obviously some of the bands are still going. Alice in Chains have reinvented themselves, got a new singer. So they're still gigging.
Same with Stone Temple Pilots.
Stone Temple Pilots, exactly. They're still sort of grunge survivors, if you like.
Yeah.
But what is there anything? We had Britpop obviously in the sort of the mid '90s that didn't really do much for me. We had Oasis and Pulp and Blur and that kind of. I guess Oasis were more guitar rock, but
more Beatles-esque.
Yeah, Beatles-esque, definitely influenced by the Beatles. What have we got to? I don't know. This climate that we're in the moment, sort of political upheaval and social unrest, etc. Do you think it's gonna? Will it birth a new musical movement, or do you think everything is so homogenised and obviously technology now is so? I don't know. It's almost like an overload, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's almost too much choice nowadays.
There is, yeah.
Oversaturation.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really. I mean, obviously we're not of the generation now that would get it, even if it may have already happened.
I find a little bit. I mean, I guess we're talking UK now, because but I mean, there seems to be a big Grimes the movement over here at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a big, I guess, and that's born of rap, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's from the street, isn't it? Like that's come from, which I guess is similar to like punk or grunge, or
how gangster rap came about in America.
Yeah.
With, NWA and Public Enemy and stuff like that.
Yeah. That
seems to be very.
They all seem to be a bit disaffected, don't they?
Yeah.
Like youth. So yeah, I mean maybe that's the closest you've got at the moment.
But do you think us old rockers? Are we a dying breed? Is there any? I mean, obviously rock music still exists.
Yeah.
But do you think it's more niche now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get played on the radio.
No.
You very rarely hear You might get the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
They might get played because they're quite commercial.
Yeah.
And they're not going to say fuck or anything in the lyrics, so they
I don't think it's relevant to like young people.
Because obviously you've got you've got a young son. You've got
No, he's not interested in rock music really.
Is he interested in music, or do you think?
Yeah, he's interested in like he seems to know like a lot of the chart music.
Oh, okay. He's aware of chart music.
He listens to a lot of Radio 1, I think.
Well, I think like I used to. I'm sure you. I mean, I used to listen to the top 40 countdown on Radio 1 when I was
But
a kid.
Even that's not relevant.
Well, that's not relevant anymore now because everything's streaming and
yeah.
But I mean,
I don't know.
Just kind of interesting. I mean, I just think there's so much more temptation with other sort of entertainment media now, isn't there? There's computer games, and there's like YouTube, and there's all these other like apps and all kinds of. Well, I guess what we're kind of doing. Even this wouldn't have been a thing, would it? Have been. 20 years ago, people didn't do podcasts.
Oh, no.
That's a modern phenomenon, isn't it?
Being able to broadcast basically to whoever
and create your own stuff, isn't it?
Even if it's only 10 or 12 people like listening, that you'd never be able to have done that
because the technology didn't exist, did it?
No,
and it existed, but it would prohibitively expensive.
Yeah,
you'd have to have a recording studio, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
Back in the day, but now you can just do everything pretty much in your mobile phone, can't you? It's like a multimedia station now, isn't it?
Yeah,
your mobile. I mean, this is done on a recording.
Digital
device.
Recorder.
Yeah, but I mean, it's affordable now, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you think back to the 80s, they would have probably been hundreds, if not thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
And now it's it's affordable, isn't it? So it has opened up and made creativity more accessible to people who wouldn't have had that luxury, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So for young people today, actually, there is a lot of opportunity, isn't there, if they want to grab it.
Yeah. It's potentially easier to make music, distribute music, but it's harder to get it heard, I think, than it probably was back in the 90s or 80s or before that.
You were probably like you were a big fish in a small pond back then. Now you're just a little fish in a big pond.
Yeah, there's fucking millions out there trying to do exactly the same thing.
You only have to scour YouTube, don't you?
Exactly.
Really? Every man and his dog's got a YouTube channel and a
or podcasts. There's millions of people out there doing exactly the same as we're doing tonight, in the hope that maybe they'll become the next sensation or whatever. In whatever. But yeah.
So maybe do you think talking's the new rock and roll then, is it?
Well, I think it's possibly you can be much more direct, I think, and if you've got something to say, people seem to listen. They're not listening to normal radio anymore, I don't think.
No.
People are like downloading a lot of podcasts and about various things. And there's also like Netflix. People binge watching stuff.
That's a sort of recent phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, to binge watch and to binge listen. I binge listen like a lot of podcasts. And so I think possibly those are
those kind of things, like podcasts, vlogging, whatever you want to call it.
Like YouTube and everything. Yeah, they seem to be the.
That's people who think they've got a message to, broadcast.
Yeah, I think music will always be there, but I'm not so sure whether it's so relevant to the youth.
Would that, taking that debate to the extreme, is that a bad thing? If music died, the day the music died, do you think should we, if music did die, should we mourn it, or should we just say, well, that's progress,
No, I think that would be like very sad, because music is a something that goes back to the dawn of time, like with man expressing themselves, through a different medium rather than speaking or whatever.
It really is an art form, isn't it? It's another form of art, like painting or
you're speaking through these instruments.
Yeah,
They're not wanting to get too poncy or whatever.
Wow, that's all right.
And
effectively that is the case, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
you're speaking words like in melodies and like tunes and it's complicated stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just amazingly deep. How also. Someone had to create. It's innovation. Someone had to create those instruments, didn't they? They had to make strings and they had to carve.
And then someone
wood.
gets hold of it and they do something like totally amazing.
It's up there with fire and finding a tin and
exactly. You're creating something that wasn't there before.
And it's something it's not like fashioning a weapon out of. It's fashioning something that's creative and. It is almost ethereal, isn't it? It's of the earth, isn't it?
And you can listen to a song, and it can immediately take you somewhere, take you back somewhere to a time or whatever, or make you think about a moment in your life.
Oh wow, yeah, so much.
Or it can change your mood. Like if you're sad, you might listen to a certain type of music, or if you're happy. You might listen to another type of music.
I think I'm sure and I'm sure I'm speaking for you, but I'm sure I'm not speaking out of turn. For me, particularly in the last, 30 years, music has been the soundtrack to my life, really. And like you said about. You hear a song and it can take you back to a certain time. So many songs I can do that. I play it and it just reminds me of the Stone Temple Pilots album Cool. I can put that on. That reminds me of us taking that long car journey from here to Cornwall when we drove, and that's so evocative of that. And that's that's 30 years ago. So it's the power of music is immeasurable, really, personally. And what I would say on my closing notes, dear listeners, if you're going to listen to something, listen to it with your mind and your heart. Hope you listen. That sounds very pretentious, actually. But I apologise for pretension, but really, listen. Take that. If there's an album you like tonight or today. Put it on and really listen to it. Listen to it like Tarquin told me to listen to that Iron Maiden album, and really listen to it. Listen to the individual components of the individual instruments, and listen to the voice, and listen to what makes that song what it is, and maybe find a newfound appreciation. Because I know, for me, if it's worth listening to, it's really worth listening to. Yeah. Intensely. And that's kind of my passing.
I think you've just summed up in that few sentences what I feel. Yeah, that's very true. I don't think I could put it any better myself.
Well, on that cod profundity that I tried to crowbar in there, I will bid you adieu.
Yeah.
And hope you enjoyed this podcast, guys. And maybe next time we'll resume to our normal movie podcast next time. We'll see how we feel.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there'll be another music one somewhere down the line.
I would say that this Grunge podcast is now well and truly over. So
a bit like Grunge itself, mate.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye bye.